What is up? Last week was pretty crazy, and unless you live under a rock, you probably couldn't go 5 seconds without hearing the words Robinhood, Gamestop, AMC, Wall Street, hedge funds, or you name it. Now, if you still have no idea what all that hype was about, then stick around because I'm about to break this down as simple as I can. Okay, so in order for you to completely follow along with what happened last week, I'm going to have to explain to you what shorting is and what that word means when we apply it to stocks. So do me a huge favor, put on your imagination hat and follow with me for this example. So let's say that you have a friend and that friend has 5 action figures. You saw those action figures and figured that not only are they not worth much now, but they will probably be worth even less in the future. So for that reason, you ask your friend to borrow those 5 action figures on the promise that you will return them at a later time. Your friend says yes, you take the action figures and immediately sell them for $5 a piece, making $25 altogether. Now, as time progresses, the action figures that you sold are valued less and less until one day they are now worth $2 a piece. Since you borrowed the action figures, you still have the responsibility to return them to your friend. So now you go back to buy those action figures that are worth $2 and you spend $10 to get them all back. You return the action figures to your friend and you are left with a $15 profit. So what you just did in that example to your friend's action figures was called shorting. Essentially, you saw the value of the action figures declining later on in the future and you wanted to make a profit through that some type of way. What happened in that example is exactly what billion-dollar hedge funds did to GameStop. These companies looked at GameStop and its historical value and made the bet that later on in the future, based on the past, GameStop is going to be worth less on the future than what it is today. And on the day that it is worth less, they want it to be there in order to profit. Now, if that is the only thing that's happened, it doesn't really sound that big of a deal. You're probably thinking, how did this manage to not only take over the news, but also take over social media as well? To understand that, we are going to look at the dangers of shorting a stock because after all, investing has its risks. So let's go ahead and go back to the example we just painted. So let's go back to our previous example and stop right after you managed to sell the 5 action figures for $25 overall. Let's say that as time progresses, instead of the action figures losing value, they somehow manage to gain value instead. What will happen? Well, you borrowed those 5 action figures. So at the end of the day, you are still obligated to return them to your friend. If those action figures were sold for $5 a piece, are now worth $100 a piece at the end of the day, you still have to find a way to get those action figures back to return them to your friend. So let's say time passes, the action figures are now worth $100 each and you have to buy them all back, and you do, so you give them back to your friend. At the end of the day, when that happened, you take a $475 loss. Now, $475 in our example is not a lot of money, but last week, Wall Street lost billions of dollars, and we're gonna take a look at how. Wallstreet Bets is a subreddit where a lot of investors can get together, tell their stories, laugh, and make memes to cover up that tragic feeling you get when you bet your kids' college tuition on a penny stock and it busts. This is a great place for investors to get together and just share stories, tell it like it is, and it is here where investors took notice of GameStop and how shorted the company was. Hedge fund companies shorted GameStop by 140%. This means that these hedge fund companies were trading more shares of GameStop than even existed of GameStop, taking the bet that one day the value was gonna go down low enough so that way they can profit millions or even billions worth of dollars. But what they did left them in a pretty vulnerable position. You see, if you go that much in on a company thinking that it is going to fail, and then the company turns around and makes a huge turnaround, then you are kind of left with your hand in the cookie jar, and that's exactly what happened. A lot of people on that subreddit page noticed how vulnerable these hedge fund companies were and had the idea that, hey, if they bought a lot of shares of GameStop, and also if they got other investors to do the same thing, then they could raise the price of GameStop. And if they were able to raise the price of GameStop stock, which they did, then these hedge fund companies would be forced to buy back in eventually, except at a much higher price than what they paid for originally. And that is exactly what happened. Hedge fund companies last week, like Melvin Capital, lost billions of dollars due to the stock price of GameStop soaring and rising as more people invested in GameStop due to the trend set on this subreddit page. Now that's GameStop, but what does Robinhood have to do with any of this? Well, on Thursday, January the 28th, Robinhood restricted trading for GameStop, AMC, Nokia, BlackBerry, and other stocks that was kind of pushed on this Wall Street page as well. Now, when I say Robinhood blocked people from trading, what I mean is Robinhood prevented people from buying these stocks, but you could sell these stocks if you had already gotten in and got your hand on a couple of stocks in the beginning half. People were really outraged about this though because they looked at it as Robinhood being a scapegoat to protect the billionaires losing billions of dollars. In fact, people were so upset that multiple lawsuits were filed against Robinhood. Robinhood got a ton of bad reviews on the App Store, so much so that Google removed some of them. And yeah, things just isn't looking really good for the future. A lot of people I know personally are switching their accounts from Robinhood and they're going somewhere else just because they didn't like that action. Now, Robinhood has a different story of what happened. They claimed that they had to do this, and one of the reasons that they chose to do this was to protect investors like you and me from throwing away our life savings into something that may or may not make or lose us money. But people don't really like the sound of that. It sounds kind of like babysitting, and honestly, it kind of feels like an excuse to cover for your friends that are paying you money under the table. The whole thing kind of leaves a bad taste in your mouth. Almost as if billionaires are looking out for other billionaires when financial struggles come their way. But when it comes to you and I, you know, the regular person, the regular girl or guy on the street, whenever we experience financial struggles, we're told to lay off the avocado on the toast that we have next time. So what happens now? Well, right now, a lot of the investors who originally bought stocks like GameStop, AMC, etc., they are purely focused on holding the line and not selling a dime of the stocks that they bought in order to keep the stock prices basically where they are, if not to raise them anymore, to put more pressure on the back of these Wall Street billionaire hedge fund companies and make them take even greater losses. If they succeed, these small-time investors are going to make a lot of money in the short term, and the billionaires, they're probably not going to be buying any yachts anytime soon. So what does this mean for you and me? A lot of people have the question, is it too late for me to get in the game? Can I go ahead and buy some GameStop and hope to rise with everybody else? And if you want to know the answer to that question, my answer to you is I don't know. I'm just some random guy on YouTube telling you about what happened. Please don't take financial advice from this channel without vetting the information yourself. I'm not giving financial advice. I'm just reporting on what I've seen, and that's basically the word on the street. What I can say is that this whole story has been absolutely crazy to watch, and it kind of gives me the feeling of David and Goliath. And just like you probably, I can't help but root for the little guy. It probably has a lot to do with the fact that I'm not a multi-billionaire. So that's it, you guys. Don't forget to smash that like button down below until it turns blue to support the channel. Also, don't forget to subscribe if you have not already. And to everyone who is currently holding the line, keep on holding because we really believe in you. So with all that being said, I'm going to leave you with a peace, love, and happiness.